My name is Athena Young. I'm 35th Annex. This past spring, my mother called for the first time in 13 years. Not to apologize, but to tell me she and my father deserved 25% of the 12 restaurants I built after they put me out at 20. My father stood on the porch that day, arms crossed, and laughed. "You'll be begging on the street," he said. For 13 years, I believed that porch was the worst thing my family ever did to me. I was wrong. Their lawsuit landed on my desk in May, and buried inside it was something darker. A secret sitting in a courthouse file for 15 years. And there's the envelope I mailed my mother once it was over. She never saw that coming. Welcome to Karma Chronicles, where family secrets come to light and quiet people finally speak. This one starts with 2 duffel bags on a porch in June and ends with a mailbox my mother will never forget. If any part of this hits close to home, don't be shy with that like button and hit subscribe. I know most of you watch and scroll past without doing either, but it's what keeps stories like this one coming. I grew up in Millbrook Hollow, Ohio, in a house where love had a bookkeeping system. My mother, Diane, taped grocery receipts to the fridge, split 3 ways in blue ink, an old habit from her bookkeeping job, carried home into everything. My father, Walter, ran a farm equipment store on Route 12, and by middle school, it was losing money, and the house felt it. "Nobody eats for free in this house," he said nightly, like scripture. At 14, I got running shoes for track, and a new line in my mother's notebook, "Shoes, advanced against future contribution." By 15, half of every diner paycheck went into the family fund. What made our house different wasn't the money. It was the accounting. Every kindness arrived with interest. 6 blocks away, on Larch Street, was a yellow kitchen or none of that applied. My father's mother's, Eleanor Young, had cooked for 40 years, church suppers and funeral lunches, and kept everything she knew in a blue notebook full of her slanted hand. She'd press my hands into the dough and say, "That's what ready feels like." My mother called it that soup kitchen. I once asked Eleanor why she never charged. "We feed people because they're hungry," she said, "not because they can pay." I was 12. I thought it was a rule about pie. It took 21 years and a courtroom to learn it was a rule about everything, and that she already saw the house I was being raised in and was quietly getting me out. Eleanor's heart started failing this spring. I was 18. By fall, she couldn't stand at the stove for long, so I cooked while she directed from a chair. One October evening, I came in and heard my mother's voice. She almost never visited. "It's just paperwork," she said, bright and patient. "Sign it, I'll handle everything." Then Eleanor, iron underneath, "I already signed everything I mean to sign." Nobody said another word. 5 weeks later, just before Christmas, Eleanor put the blue notebook in my hands. "This is yours. Keep it where she can't." She died that February. At the funeral lunch, my mother offered to keep the notebook safe at our house. I told her I'd already packed it away. First time I ever lied to her. 16 months later, my father's store was dying, and everyone knew it. I was 20, a year into community college in Ashford, before the money ran out, waiting tables at the Route 42 diner. One Sunday, my parents called a family meeting. My father slid over a loan application, $50,000, to refinance the store. His credit was wrecked, and the bank wanted a co-signer with clean credit. I was the only one who qualified. Then my mother turned her notebook around, 20 years itemized, backdated to my 16th birthday, totaling $18,500, underlined twice. "We're asking you to stand behind this family, the way it stood behind you." I'd seen the empty shelves. Co-signing wasn't a rescue, it was a burial, and the plot was mine. I said no. He closed the folder slowly. They gave me until Saturday. I left with 2 duffel bags, a shoebox of paperbacks, and Eleanor's notebook zipped in my jacket. My father was the one on the porch, 3rd Saturday in June. "You'll be begging on the street," he said and laughed. Small, dry, certain. Give it 6 months. I slept in my old Civic for 9 nights behind a grocery store. Washed my hair in a gas station sink. Never late to a shift. It was the only thing left to control, so I controlled it. On the 10th morning, my Aunt Rita knocked on my window, holding an envelope in a dead woman's handwriting. "Your grandmother gave me this 2 years ago. Hold it until she needs it most. I think that's now." Inside was a payable on death account, opened 2 years earlier. Balance $31,000. Beneficiary, Athena Young. Not my father. Not my mother. Me. Folded around it a torn half sheet for flour, rent, and a start. Not for anyone's debts. E. I claimed it with her death certificate, opened my own account elsewhere, rented a room above a hardware store for $10 a month, and started pricing used food trucks. It took 2 more years of double shifts before I felt brave enough to spend it. I found a retired step van at auction for $13,500. Repairs ran another $4,800. I painted it butter yellow and lettered the side, Eleanor's table. 5 recipes from the Blue Notebook. Rescaled for a lunch rush. Tested until they came out right. The biscuits alone took 40 tries. Opening day I sold 23 orders and went home with $74 in a cigar box. That winter nearly finished me. By January the crowds were gone and my generator died. $650 I didn't have. In the margin of Eleanor's pot pie recipe, she'd once written for cold days, feed them first. So one Thursday I made 45 pot pies and gave them away free to the packing plan night shift, a card stapled to each box. 6 days it looked like the worst decision of my life. On the 7th there was a line. Pot Pie Thursday carried Eleanor's table through that winter and everyone after. A man named Frank Doyle finished his pie one afternoon and offered me something I hadn't let myself want. He'd run a diner in Dayton for 30 years and wanted out. You cook like somebody taught you right, he said, offering a seller-financed lease on his building, terms no bank would give me. I signed with shaking hands, 23 years old. The first year I worked hours I'm not proud of. Year 2, I hired Mara to run the front of house. One night watching me recount an already counted drawer, she said, "You run this place like you're paying off a debt nobody can see." I laughed it off. I didn't listen. That Christmas, a card came with a Millbrook Hollow postmark, my mother's hand. No letter. Just a line under the greeting. "We hear the restaurant is doing well. It would be nice if you remembered where you came from. Your father's shop closed because he refused to help." 5 years of silence, and that was the flag they planted. I wrote a 6-page reply, read it back, heard it sounded like an invoice, and dropped it in the fryer grease bin instead. No contact. Not out of hate, out of arithmetic. The next several years moved at a pace my accountant would appreciate. A second location within a year. 4 within 4 years. The pandemic nearly took everything until family meal boxes and Pot Pie Thursday carried us through, the way they always had. 8 within 9 years. 12 today, about 260 people on payroll, and a suspended meal board at every register. Buy a meal for a stranger. Anyone hungry takes it. No questions. It's a rule about pie. And still, every January, I ran the numbers alone. Twice. Still counting like somebody was going to check my math. Then this past March, a magazine wanted a profile. I said yes, partly for the hiring push, mostly for her. They photographed me holding the Blue Notebook open, one biscuit-stained page filling the frame. A local news station ran 2 minutes on it. It traveled, reaching Millbrook Hollow by dinner. All that filming had been hard on the old notebook. The spine was shedding threads, so I took it to a conservator, a precise woman named Priya, who called 4 days later. "Did you know there's something inside the back cover?" Stitched flat against the board was a manila envelope for the day they come for this. Inside, a letter dated that October, 15 years old, listing every place her handwriting could be verified, and 3 lines I've memorized, like a prayer. Diane asked me twice to sign papers about my recipes. I never signed. If a paper ever says I did, it lies. I put it in the flagship's safe and told exactly one person. 11 days later, my phone lit up with a word I'd deleted from my contacts 13 years earlier. "Mom, we've seen the article," she said. "No hello. We think 25% is fair." Eleanor's recipes belong to the family. I've been selling them for years without a phone call. "Everything you are, you owe to this family." I told her the truth. "You put me on the street with 2 bags. There wasn't a phone to call." And hung up. The following Friday, a process server found me at lunch rush. Walter and Diane Young, plaintiffs, versus Athena Young, unjust enrichments, constructive trust, asking a judge to declare 25% of everything I owned had belonged to them all along. Exhibit A was a codicil to Eleanor's will, dated that same October, 15 years old, leaving all recipes to my father, recently discovered in a box in the attic. That October. The same fall I'd heard, "It's just paperwork. Sign it." I called the best probate litigator in the city, Nadia Cole. She read the complaint in 10 minutes. Weak law, recipes aren't property, and a 15-year-old codicil surfacing 11 days after you're on television is the kind of coincidence judges notice. This is an expensive nuisance. They're betting you'll pay to make it stop. Then she looked longer at the signature than I liked. Your grandmother, did she send Christmas cards? We dug. The probate file from 15 years back showed a small, clean estate, no mention anywhere of recipes or a codicil. To reopen it that old, my parents' lawyer had to claim it was only just found. I put Eleanor's sewn-in letter on Nadia's desk. She read the last 3 lines twice. Miss Paramiet, young, your grandmother is about to testify. We gathered her piece by piece. My aunt's box of decades of letters, church ledgers with Eleanor's name in the margins, a bank signature card under subpoena. One evening, reading a dead woman's mail together, Rita told me something I didn't want to hear. Your mother was 9 when the sheriff put her family's furniture on the lawn. She stood on the sidewalk guarding a lamp. She grew up believing the only things that can't be taken from you are the things with your name on paper. Eleanor saw it in her the first week. That's why she never let Diane near her papers. Not spite. She knew what hunger looks like when it grows up. Understanding isn't the same as forgiveness. A forensic examiner, Dr. Bitley, Priya Anand, spent 3 weeks with the codicil and Eleanor's known handwriting, then set 2 images side by side. No 2 genuine signatures are identical, ever. This one is a point-for-point match to a Christmas card your grandmother mailed 6 years earlier. That doesn't happen in nature. That happens on a light table, with patience. Under magnification, hesitation marks, a pencil ghost beneath the ink. One witness on the codicil had died 3 years before he supposedly watched Eleanor sign. The other was my mother's card game friend of 30 years. My mother hadn't found Eleanor's signature. She'd grown it from a photo album over years. That night, a settlement offer arrived. Dismiss everything for $250,000, mutual confidentiality. With this behind us, your parents are hopeful the family can finally begin healing. I sat at my table until 2 in the morning, and I very nearly paid it. Peace. A mother who might finally say something kind. All I had to do was keep one secret, forever. Then I read Eleanor's letter again. She hadn't asked me to win. She'd asked me not to let the lies stand. In the morning I told Nadia, file the report. My mother's deposition was the following Tuesday. 40 minutes of soft questions, answered in her bright teller's voice, the attic, October. She and Walter alone. Then Nadia laid the Christmas card and the codicil side by side under the light. Can you explain how your mother-in-law signed her name twice, 6 years apart, identical to the width of a pen stroke? I have been in walk-in freezers warmer than that room became. My mother looked at me, and what was on her face wasn't guilt. It was fury. The fury of a bookkeeper whose numbers had stopped obeying her. Her lawyer called a recess. In the noise, my father, silent by the window all morning, picked up the overlay with both hands, the way you'd hold a photograph of someone you'd buried. He turned to my mother. Diane, where did you get my mother's Christmas card? Nobody answered him. Their lawyer found us within the hour. Dismiss it now, cover my fees, seal the report. Nadia laid out the choice. Seal it and it ends clean today. Or refuse and it stays public forever. Strong enough for a criminal referral if I wanted one. Through the glass, my father sat alone, still reading that overlay. 63 years old, hungry his whole life for one sentence from his mother. Holding proof the only version he'd ever gotten was counterfeit. No seal, I told Nadia. The report stays in the record. Dismissal with prejudice, they cover your fees. No criminal referral. I'm done collecting. Somebody in this family had to be first. They took the deal because there was nothing left to take. Before the papers were signed, my father came back in, picked up a pen, and withdrew as a plaintiff on his own line. Hand shaking so hard the court reporter looked away. My mother said his name once, like a command to a dog that had always come. He didn't look at her. On his way out, he stopped in front of me. I said you'd beg, he said. I know, I said. He made himself look at me. You never did. No apology. But the first time in my life, he looked at me like a person instead of a balance. The court dismissed the case that August. My mother called 3 weeks later, before the morning shift. Your father moved out, she said instead of hello. He's at Rita's. He filed papers last week, 30 years Athena. She wanted me to feel it was my fault, that I had 12 restaurants and she had nothing, that the least I could do was admit they still deserved something. I felt anger rise and underneath it something quieter. Finished. Check your mailbox, I said, and hung up. I'd mailed it the day the dismissal came through, the full forensic report. Because the truth was the one debt I actually owed her, a copy of Eleanor's letter, and on top a recipe card in my own hand. Chicken pot pie. Complete, nothing held back. Because once, my mother ate that pie at a yellow kitchen table and said, with no invoice attached, "That's wonderful." At the bottom I'd written what I'd finally figured out, no invoice. It was never for sale. It was always free. She hasn't called since. Rita told me what she saw when she stopped by for my father's tools. The fridge door bare except for one thing. Pinned dead center. A recipe card for chicken pot pie. My father lives at Rita's now. Once a month he drives to the flagship, orders the pot pie, and pays every time. He leaves the money under the plate. It's the only language he has, and he's using it to say what he can't. We start with silence and work up from there. Some months, that's a kind of peace. On the first Sunday of every month, all 12 Eleanor's tables run with the staff named Eleanor. Sunday no register, no tickets, anyone hungry welcome. Last week I was teaching biscuits to my newest hire, 19, sleeping on a cousin's couch since his parents put him out. His first batch came out like hockey pucks, and he braced like he was waiting for a bill. I pressed his hands into the next batch, the way she once pressed mine. We feed people because they're hungry, I told him, not because they can pay. His shoulders came down an inch. Somewhere, a ledger closed. Here's what my grandmother knew all along. Love that keeps a ledger always ends up in court. Love given freely keeps feeding people long after you're gone. If someone in your life ever made you feel like a debt instead of a daughter, that's your sign. The only thing you truly owe anyone is the truth. Drop a comment telling me where you were when you decided to prove someone wrong, and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.